world surrounded by franchises, reboots, and shared universes. An elite team of podcasters will risk body and soul to investigate the depths of intellectual properties, one multiverse, subgenre, and trend at a time. Who are we? We're the IP Squad. Welcome back to the IP Squad and our ongoing investigation into films based on pulp and comic strip heroes. I'm John Campbell. With me, as always, I guess they're the mysterious masked men of this podcast. They're the Jones Boys.
However, I am wearing an old Ben Cooper Halloween mask of Little Debbie from Little Debbie snack cakes.
We didn't say
so
what
it throws
mask.
it off a little bit.
I thought that was supposed to be sexy snack cake brand girl.
Yeah. No, Ben Cooper used the names. They just didn't care.
Yeah. By the way,
sexy snack
and I know
cake
this is
girl.
what people were wanting to hear immediately. There's a documentary about Ben Cooper now that I want to watch.
Wow.
I'm not going to stop you.
So I just came across the trailer was recommended for me on YouTube. I'm like, oh, you're right, YouTube. That is something I would be interested in.
We are in the Halloween time.
They had to disqualify. They had to pull from the market Johnny Human Torch. That costume did not didn't play the way they thought it was going to. With the rags soaked in gasoline and the matches.
It's a fun thing for a kid, Yeah.
Kids love it. Halloween.
Yeah. Come on. Guys,
Johnny Human Torch.
Yeah.
Johnny Human Torch.
I gotta say though,
oil-soaked rags in a match.
Speaking of oil-soaked things in a match, you guys smelling that?
Yep.
Is it?
What?
Hold on a minute. What am I getting? Oh no, guys! It's Disney's The Lone Ranger. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I thought it smelled a little Verbinski-esque.
I let it in here last night, and I just can't get that smell out of my place.
There's no Febreze strong enough.
This is this is the finale of this season, and I feel like it's both sad and actually weirdly appropriate for this season that this is how.
So we've gone,
things end.
John. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
but we've gone from the depths of a Robert Wagner Prince Valiant.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
To the depths of a Johnny Depp Tonto.
Yeah.
Is that where we are?
We've dug up a couple times, but ultimately still ended up lower into the ground than where we started. So, boy,
I would have to say our ratio, it's not great on the great ones. We of course were very happy with the great ones.
There have been some high highs, but some low lows, and we are finishing with about, at least in my opinion, and Brendan seems to be indicating the same, about as low as you fucking get this week.
Well, fellas.
Yes. Oh no.
Robin, no.
I have a hot take, fellas.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
No, this movie is some pretty looking garbage. But what is it you're about to say, Robin?
Well, a couple of things. One, I'm grateful that John has once again given a whirl to another backdoor pilot podcast, welcoming Wilkinson.
Oh, yeah.
So we look over the pulpier choices of Tom Wilkinson.
I thought it was welcoming Wilson, and it was just going to be about Ruth Wilson and how beautiful and talented she is.
And how horrifically wasted she is in this movie. How she has absolutely nothing to do in this movie. Yeah, what a goddamn waste, because she is immense.
You're looking at her, you're just going, she's a worthy adversary for Luther. What is she doing in this?
I know. I remember that. I was such a, and still am such a massive, massive fan of Luther that I was like, oh, she's going to be in a Lone Ranger movie. That'll be cool. Then I saw it and went, oh my God, why
I wasn't
bother?
clocking her at this point.
Why bother? I mean, why bother to? You didn't need somebody as talented
I didn't know
as her.
she was
huge budgeted Hollywood film.
I'm sure
I would be a fool to pass this up.
And it's in the trivia. I have like the other people she beat out, and I'm like, oh, I'm sure they were real bummed. These other successful actresses were real bummed that they didn't get in this movie. I mean, maybe at the time they were, but Jesus Christ. By the way, okay, Rob, what's your hot take on this movie?
Oh, the other thing, if you look at my amazing Letterboxd review under @Otto Meyer.
You actually wrote a review for this one?
Yeah, because okay. I kept thinking about it, and maybe John will back me a little bit on this.
I think there's one thing, yes, that I will defend in this movie.
I will say this reminded me, and not in the obvious ways, but also in a way that I was hammering on when we talked about the Green Hornet. This reminded me of the Green Hornet in that I kept watching and going, there is so much in the attack on this movie that I really enjoy. I love the set pieces. I like the backstory for Tonto. I like the idea that John Reed is kind of a Destry, like from Destry Rides Again, as opposed to a Rance Stoddard from the man who shot Liberty Valance.
he had to be some Jimmy Stewart character. That's all that matters.
The guy who can do quite a bit as a hero, he just chooses not to because he is going down a different path. He can shoot, he can ride, he was raised with his brother, he knows how to do these things, he just chooses not to because he believes in the law. And then the idea of the moral choices of a person who sets himself up as a vigilante.
I'm actually right there with you on all those points, except I think they are horrifically executed.
Right. And I'm right there with John because all the things you're mentioning are in this movie and are good, except in execution. Because what you're describing as John Reed's journey in this, I would have been there. I mean, that's not it's not the stereotypical take. The problem is that tone here is a big problem. It is a Pirates of the Caribbean tone, grafted onto what could have been a pretty good Lone Ranger movie. So the problem is that it doesn't work. No. And he's played as a goofball, and you've got Buster Keaton in Indian face next to him.
Right.
And it's just,
let's rip that Band-Aid off. Like
having said that, if it were a Native American playing Tonto,
that would solve a good chunk of
problems. Or a guy. We've all seen Reservoir Dogs at this point. Reservation Dogs. Yeah. We've all seen that. We know not just that, but several other films with amazing. Actors who happen to be Native American.
Immediately, the guy.
Yeah, you can find somebody.
No, immediately the guy I thought for sure is Zahn McLaren.
That's
from from Reservation Dogs, and he plays Joe Leaphorn on Dark Winds. He would have been an amazing Tonto.
Because he can do anything. He's very funny.
He's great. It's so funny.
He would have crushed a Tonto. That wouldn't have solved the problems.
It would have taken care of some of it. Yep. The problem is that the film wants its cake and wants to eat it too with tone, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
The mandate from
the comedy drops.
The comedy
is every time it rises.
That's the biggest thing I was thinking. I'm not necessarily against there being humor in a Lone Ranger movie. However, none of the jokes are funny.
I would like it if it were organic humor. In other words, yes, I think their friendship can be. Look,
they can have also like a buddy cop thing.
Yeah,
The thing is that you don't need a grim and gritty Lone Ranger. You do have to understand that it's a guy with PTSD who is seeking revenge at the beginning of his career, who becomes a great hero. But the thing is, their friendship, their brotherhood of John and Tonto should be something where they like to be in each other's company and And if the movie was charting like them growing closer together as real brothers and that would be awesome too. You don't get that.
I did like the running gag of what Kimosabi means, because to me that is always a great joke. I loved it in the Far Side panel. To me that is Kimosabi translates to something terrible.
I wanted more of a payoff for that. I like the whole thing about it means wrong brother. Yeah, but then I wanted it to I wanted to mean something else at the end or something like that. It's like actually,
because then he gives the name to the little kid in the framing device, and we'll talk about the framing device. He says the name, he gives that name to, and it's like, well, that doesn't fit. Only John Reed could be Kimosabi because of its wrong brother.
But Brennan, I mean, obviously it's supposed to be that he's kind of having a senior moment where he's seeing the kid and it reminds him.
No, by the way, once again, here's the thing with this movie. There is no one problem. There are 800 problems.
There are 800 problems.
This movie.
But a bitch ain't one of them.
But I'll say this right now. Number one, my first, beyond my obvious first note is get Depp the hell out of here. He's got to go. I mean, watching this. I mean, watching this then, but particularly watching it now, I am like, how is everyone not in jail for this? This is the most nakedly racist bullshit. I can't believe that because he is not only not a Native American guy, but he is doing 1950s Kimosabi. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Like I said,
but then the out for the movie and the filmmakers is when they meet the Comanche elders and they're like going, his brain is broken. He's insane.
But you understand that feels like
okay. Again, that's okay. I'm fine with that. My problem with Depp as Tonto, besides it being a terrible idea, is the marketing moral calisthenics that the studio and everyone involved had to jump through and twist themselves into a pretzel in order to justify this.
Yeah.
And really, bottom line, it was the green dollar sign.
Yep.
They didn't think they could open it with Armie Hammer. And that, to me, was unconscionable that they made that decision.
To be fair, a good chunk of this budget did go to bringing people in for Armie Hammer to eat. Now, I will say that, I mean, they had to keep him fed,
Where do you think that concept...
It's pretty ironic that the villain of the piece has cannibal issues.
Yeah. He and Butch Cavendish should have gotten together. They have some things.
I'm glad we're kind of all on the same page, but I will still irritate you with my nitpicking. So are you ready?
Wait. Let me just say, part of my hot take is I enjoyed what John said was bad. I actually liked the combinations of Western influences. Obviously, Verbinski watched a lot of Sergio Leone, a lot of Sam Peckinpah. There is a specific reason why they were picking "Shall We Gather at the River" as the hymn that the Presbyterians are singing. That's exactly the way that Wild Bunch opens.
Yeah.
And Peckinpah would use that hymn in other films as well. So, and then the Buster Keaton of the train sequence and other stunts.
I want to say the train sequence is almost like I almost like keep that. Get rid of the rest of the movie and start again.
I would get rid of the comedy in the train sequence. It's amazing, but again, it's like, I'm doing funny walking and my funny Johnny Depp thing on top of the train.
Yeah. Well, that's
not what I'm talking about. I was just talking about the design of it.
The construction of it is Spielbergian.
I meant
Indiana
when I
Jones.
said this is beautiful garbage. It is shot beautiful.
Verbinski is a good director.
He went full bore. and art direction too, where I mean, is that way I want Lone Ranger to look? Not exactly. He's in the dusty Eastern suit for the entire movie,
but they keep making a point of pointing that out.
Yes. Yeah. And whatever, that really didn't throw me. I thought
he's got the white hat and the mask. I mean,
for a cartoon Western movie, they dressed people like. That's pretty period accurate, and they all look like Old West people.
Except
I was like,
for the
that's great.
Once again, of Tonto.
Which, here's another thing. The whole thing about his look and the bird and all of that came right out of his head, which meant that Verbinski and the writers had to somehow incorporate his visual idea of Tonto based on a painting, which I've seen the painting. And it was symbolic. They're like, no one actually in the Old West, no tribe walked around with a full stuffed bird on his head.
No, and that was like,
but I think that's what I want to go with. And they're like, okay.
And then I not only do I want to do that, I want to make that. No, that's the problem here is Depp has so much power in this movie. This is a Johnny Depp star vehicle. This is not the Lone Ranger. All right. The Lone Ranger is the supporting character to the insane whims of a man who has, and I was curious. I'm going, where is this? This is the beginning of the end of this guy's career. From here on, it's pretty much garbage for Depp. Before any public, personal issues come his way.
Yeah.
It's not like his career was doing hot.
The zany guy with the mustache.
Mordecai.
Movie.
That was
Mordecai.
Which is another movie kind of like this, where it feels like this entirely stems from Johnny Depp thinks this is funny. And Johnny Depp's sense of humor is not. It's not
but
great.
I mean, but it the whole reason that he had that much power is, for some reason, there was a perfect marriage in the first Pirates of the Caribbean where they're like, holy crap, that is a character, and walks away with that movie, and you're like, of course, it's great.
And I'm sure,
but he brings that energy to this too, where it's like, that's what I do. I'm now the new deadpan guy that's going to be slapstick, and you're like, oh, gee.
Yeah, that's and it does feel like Disney's like, geez, because the famous story, but they wanted to fire him for that. So I'm sure on this one, they were like, we didn't like what he did in Pirates, but it really worked. So I guess, who are we to question him this time either? Yeah, Johnny, go, man, go.
If you're trying to launch a franchise with a new hero pair, and it's supposed to be awesome, and again, old IP that has a lot of
that's key
strength
as well,
behind
right?
it, power behind it.
Is that Pirates was based on a ride, so like beyond Pirates and like some supernatural
there were
stuff,
no characters in the ride.
No one was really going, this isn't Pirates,
in fact, people were excited anytime they do an Easter egg in the movie that corresponded to the ride. People go,
with the
which
key
is
and stuff,
that's the way you do it, because you have so much freedom.
Yeah,
this is an established character, established IP, and can you do different takes? Yeah, if you want to go straight parody satire, do it. Enjoy it, and if it flops,
I will say
I didn't go anyway.
That's
it's like
the
that's
biggest.
not something I
That's
was
the
interested
biggest problem here, though, is as you're saying, it is tone. It is doing both. It is doing. And I think one of the other big problems, you bring up for the first Pirates is successful. I mean, this literally, they just ported everyone over from those Pirates movies. These are those writers. This is that director.
Yeah.
It's the exact same team. But what's interesting is this movie also, like I said, there's just so many things wrong with this movie. We don't even have enough time on this show to get into all of them, probably.
No, it's a over 2 hour movie.
Well, it's a 2.5 hour runtime.
It's crammed with so much shit in it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm glad you mentioned, because that's the thing I was going to bring up, is it suffers from the problems that those later Pirates movies have. There's 18 villains. There's 6 separate subplots that are all, and it's just, and the movie costs, once again, to talk a little,
a gajillion.
It costs like $250 million production budget, $360 all in on this thing, and I'm just going, more so than John Carter, because John Carter is set on Mars. It does have all these alien people. You don't have to spend $250 million on a Lone Ranger movie. That's insane. You
don't have to crash a real train.
No, that's the thing. Is I do I agree with, and I said that before, and I bring it up all the time. I do think the train sequence at the end of this movie is astounding. However,
it's great.
What I forgot was there's also a massive train sequence earlier, and I'm going, I'm sorry, you need 2 separate gigantic train sequences.
Well, it's John. It's what's classically known as Chekhov's train.
Yeah, you introduce a train.
You introduce it. You do a huge thing with it in the first act, but you need to top that by the third act.
It's just like a thing.
When you look at, if you boil it down to its story, its plot structure, if you just boil it down to origin, and we're tying it into the completion of the Intercontinental Railroad, which of course was a big real thing. All of this is fine. Yeah, like a mysterious wealth of silver that the white people want, and that the Comanche are getting. All of that works. The problem is that they have to make room for framing sequence that doesn't add anything. There's all kinds of things in here that you do. Like, we actually don't need Butch Cavendish to be a cannibal. Not that I'm offended by that. It's like, sure, that's a dark way to go. But there's so many things that are going.
Monster rabbits.
Monster rabbits.
That's CG.
Monster
we don't.
Rabbits.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, that's another thing too. By the way, I don't know if you saw this, guys. If you look at the Wikipedia, the original draft of this was even more supernatural, and Cavendish was a werewolf. Right. And that was why he needed silver
or a
bullets.
were-coyote or something.
Yeah, something like that. He was a literal monster. Hence, he needed the silver bullets because they were really leaning into pirates at that point, right? Like with the supernatural stuff.
Now, I have read, for a bit there, Topps Comics had Joe R. Lansdale doing Lone Ranger and Tonto. And Joe R. Lansdale, being who he is, brings in a lot of supernatural elements.
Does that guy like supernatural stuff? That guy? No.
Do what?
I said, Lansdale likes supernatural stuff? Never.
That guy?
Never knew Lansdale to be a supernatural guy. But
and I don't mind that. Again, it's like, okay, that's alternate universe Lone Ranger mixing up with supernatural stuff. One thing I wish that people would remember, this didn't have to be a summer tentpole blockbuster.
I think it's a little bit like the John Carter thing, where I'm like, really? This is what you're like? That it's an interesting thing to think this is going to be the thing that like sets the world on fire.
Legend of the Lone Ranger went there a little bit too, with having his first adventure out of the gate is essentially involving every famous Western person, including the president of the United States.
At one point, Brett Maverick shows up. It's crazy.
Hey, anybody playing poker over here? All right.
So that's a little bit of that thinking. But Lone Ranger, the radio show, Lone Ranger, the books, and the TV show is really about, once you get past the origin, he is essentially the wandering hero that shows up and helps resolve a small issue for people, and then he moves on. And they could have kept that in mind. That doesn't mean it has to be boring, but it could be. There's no human thing in this. In this story, Lone Ranger's entire being is only wrapped up in the girl I let get away and married my brother. He's only concerned about his extended family.
Yep.
I want her back and want my nephew to be safe. And you're going, well, that's a little reductive. Lone Ranger is a hero for all, but this movie is about him selfishly going, where's Rebecca?
Well,
all that. I'm like,
I
okay,
think that's one of the big things. I think
I'm gonna get revenge for my brother.
Yeah, they don't give the Lone Ranger enough to. They don't give John Reed, the character, really enough motive. Like, but let's say it's way too. I agree. I was reading a lot of the reviews when this came out, and nobody really. Weirdly, Quentin Tarantino defends the movie, but even he bags on it a lot.
Yeah.
I like. It's like this made your best of the year, but you're like, oh, the whole second act doesn't work, and blah. I'm like, Quentin, how is this anyway? I also want to Quentin. I am like, I agree that train sequence is amazing. It's still a horrible movie. Like both things can be true.
Helena Bonham Carter comes wandering in.
You could just get rid of that character entirely. She needs to go.
You can.
And she has.
I will say, I liked
great.
Her accent.
She's
and her
great.
Take. I was like,
of course, she's wonderful.
Yeah, that's a thing.
But it's
she is coming in out of Wild Wild West. I have an alabaster leg.
Well, and immediately
an ivory leg that has a shotgun.
The amount of people who reference Wild Wild West in their reviews of this, because it's just like another big budget summer Western thing.
Again, it's that trope of like the same thing in Quigley Down Under and with Kevin Kline in Wild Wild West is the guy who can fight but chooses to go a different way.
Yeah.
And then the end is, I was always good with a gun. It's just
Yeah.
I mean, at least they give Armie Hammer the thing of I don't know how I'm hitting all of these trick shots, but let me just get it right one more time, please.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
one of the things Spirit Walker nonsense and all that. It's like, I thought I couldn't get hit. It's like, no, you can get hit. You just can't be killed in battle. And then, of course, later, Tonto is insane, and he's like, oh, well, oops.
You didn't.
Thank God Silver's there for some of the most hilarious hijinks. That horse.
Well, that stuff is just like, that's where I am going. Who is this for? I think they're trying to make the 8-year-olds in the theater laugh. But the 8-year-olds,
but it's hard to get the 8-year-olds back in the theater after they had to watch the dude eat people. You know, I mean,
that's the thing. Is the movie's a mess.
Werewolf rabbits.
It's also the 8-year-olds, or they're asleep because the movie's 4 hours
so long.
I mean, that's another thing too. You have to get a half hour of this movie gone. I'm sorry, you just can't. It's so dense with bullshit. And that's exact. And like by the time Barry Pepper shows, and I love Barry Pepper. Well, I'm well on the record.
And he brings it. He gives a very,
as he always does,
nuanced.
But he comes into
three-dimensional cardimensional cartoon character.
And for pretty much anything I make on the stove, I throw in a little Barry Pepper.
I'm throwing a little bit of Barry Pepper in my jambalaya. I'll tell you what.
I forgot you were going to mention you're cooking with Barry Pepper.
Yeah,
but
he comes in like an hour and a half into this movie. And I'm going, we don't need another villain.
And I will say that facially, Fichtner, who's going for it.
Oh, Fichtner is one of the
Barry
few...
Pepper look a little similar. I mean, not that I was ever confused, but I kept going like,
they were the brothers.
I was like, why don't they make that guy a Cavendish or whatever?
Because Barry Pepper basically does play Butch Cavendish in True Grit, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's the outlaw in True Grit. And it's basically, he is that. But I agree. Why could... one of the easiest decisions would have been like, I'm sorry, either Tom Wilkinson has Army Captain or he has Butch Cavendish as his henchman. You can't do both.
He has both.
He has both. And you just
and then very late in the day, the hostile takeover scene where like, Stephen Root.
And
I say welcome. I say welcome to Stephen Root.
I say welcome, but I also go,
he shot me in my glutes.
Man, here's the thing. And because they have the money, obviously, and Bruckheimer has everyone in his phone, I'm sure. It is like, hey, Stephen Root, that's great. He doesn't do anything. I mean, he shows up, and as a pro as always, they all are.
Yeah,
everyone's
they kind of do the thing at the end of, and now you'll help the railroads defeat all their enemies, and that's when he goes, no, I'm going to just roam the.
I cannot be bought.
I'll be Kane in Kung Fu.
Because there are 1,000 subplots in this thing too. You get like, Barry Pepper's almost an interesting character. Where this whole idea about like, by making it seem like the Comanche attacked, you forced me to commit genocide. But then I'm also just cool to mow down Comanche at the end of the movie too.
Yeah, and
you're
then
like,
he goes a little nuts, and also he has this thing about touching things and wearing gloves, and
he's got
blood on his hands, literally.
It's too many things.
Tom Wilkinson, they do
no
such
argument
a job.
For me, John. It's way too much.
Tom Wilkinson is never given a good reason why he's so wrapped up in Dan's widow and child. His obsession with
they make a nod towards he rumored to have lost his reproductive equipment during the Civil War.
He has a one-off line,
but he wanted a family.
But like I'm saying, they do not. I mean,
and so he that's just her as a bird in a cage.
That is just screenwriters bending over to try and connect everything.
Calisthenics,
This is doing another. The hero's origin has to tie in with the villain's origin thing, where it's like, oh, well, geez, once John is finished getting rid of Butch Cavendish and Cole, the leader, the guy from the railroad, at that point, he's accomplished his life's mission. He can just go and sit down somewhere. The goal of Lawman is not stressed enough. Legal, yes. The idea that he's a lawyer is like going, no, he'll be tried in court, and Tonto's like going, idiot, shoot him in the head,
white men so dumb. You mean white men like you, Johnny Depp?
right,
snap.
exactly.
By the way,
nitpick.
Wait, I'm sorry.
I'm doing nitpick.
I love that
you guys keep.
I love that, Brendan. I just gotta say, I love that you're nitpicking a movie that has gaping, bleeding wounds in it. You know, like.
But these are things that could have been that wouldn't have changed the shape of the movie necessarily. Mm-hmm. Well, they might have a little, but it takes nothing to get these things right. In other words, hey guys, Tonto, canonically, Potawatomi. He's not Comanche.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And also
I
Wendigo.
Didn't know that. Yeah.
Wendigo is only in the mythology of the Northeastern, as in the Algonquin tribes. Right, no Comanche, no Midwestern or Western Indian tribes knew of a Wendigo. That's not even a figure. For
just in general, that's totally valid what you're saying. But also, I would just say in general, you just don't need any of the Wendigo shit at all.
You don't?
It doesn't matter.
No,
totally pointless.
You didn't need a cannibal Butch Cavendish, which would then take the Wendigo part.
Which I love. Like I said, the idea that he at some point was an actual monster, and they were like, "No, take that out." But still leave him eating people. Yeah, when he starts. By the way.
Apparently it was much more graphic in the original version.
But I'm just going like, well, that's that thing about just like I'm watching this movie and there's goofy shit with Depp farting around, and then fucking Fichtner's carving a dude's heart out, and you're just going like, what do you want this movie to be? I don't. I can't. And then it's the same thing with, and actually this was Tarantino's point that I completely agree with, is he goes like, we're having fun, and then we're slaughtering the Comanche. Like, just mowing them down. And he's like, having a little less fun with this movie when I see actual genocide being committed.
Yeah.
Right.
And the movie tries to treat that seriously, but then, and it does, but then in 15 minutes, we're farting around again.
Yes.
And they were breaking their arms, patting themselves on the back to talk about the white man's genocide of the Comanches.
Well, I love that. I was reading some of the press from when this movie came out, and Depp is going like, we're really working to fix a lot of the problems of the Western genre.
They did.
Yeah, I'm just going are you fucking kidding me? Also, I had remembered him saying he had Native American ancestry. I didn't remember how much he was like, yeah, I think my grandmother or something. I'm like, oh God, it's vague even. He's not even like, I'm 1/16. He's literally going, I think somewhere in the something I have. And he's like, don't even say anything then if you're going to say that.
Well, and then he went and paid for somebody to make him an honorary Native American.
Supposedly, the Comanche brought him into their actual tribe.
Well, they made a big deal about we had an advisor on the movie, and it's all valid, but then other people being like, yeah, but kind of what you're bringing up, Brad, is like, yeah, but you got these 12 things really wrong, so I don't know. What are you talking about? And I don't expect this to be, it is still pulp, but my God, you could put a little more effort in.
Yeah. They chose not to.
Yeah. I just kept looking at it and going, so the Green Hornet's starting to look pretty good now.
Green Hornet's looking real good.
Because
let's not forget the connective tissue of Dan
Tom
Jr.
Wilkinson. Oh wait, no.
Oh right, yeah, that's right. Well, the other thing I was thinking about the whole time watching this, and then I had to remember that because it's this Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio who wrote this,
right,
from Pirates of the Caribbean.
They have a lot to answer for.
Well, but then I'm going like, you know what movie did all this stuff a lot better? And then I went, oh right, another movie they wrote, which is called The Mask of Zorro, and I just kept thinking, Mask of Zorro does so many of the same things this movie does so much better. And it's the same fucking writers.
The horse gags that we're complaining about in this are done very well in Mask of Zorro.
Mask of Zorro, we didn't cover
it's not so zany. It's just
Mask of Zorro.
It's the realistic thing of a guy needs to tame a horse, who is not used to him riding it.
Right.
Therefore,
there's a naturalism to it. It is like, the horse isn't there when he goes to jump on his horse, so he falls.
Right,
he's
or
like,
when he
that's funny. The horse isn't.
Well, the comedy in Mask of Zorro felt organic to character and situation, and here it seems it literally feels taped on to something that could have been serious and still entertaining, an action adventure movie.
Every time that every time that Johnny Depp has to be like, something wrong with that horse. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, every line out of his mouth feels like an abuse.
No, yeah, that's the thing is like it's a page one rewrite on Tonto, and I agree with you, Robin, though that like the initial idea that they have, the backstory they give him I think is good. I like that.
I think it's solid. I like the brothers becoming the main bad guys. I have it when and actually this movie I liked a little bit better, but literally like hating or loving things within a nanosecond. I haven't had that kind of reaction since I saw Natural Born Killers, where I was just like, great, terrible, wonderful, horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't really talked any about Armie Hammer, who I think
I think he's like not good or bad particularly. He's fine.
He's fine.
I will argue for his performance in this.
I think the writing for him lets him down in a lot of places.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think he's forget about all the.
Oh no! Yeah, obviously, yeah.
I mean, to me, he's kind of like Jonathan Majors in that if you can ignore everything this guy has personally done in his life, he's a very good actor. And
no, it's true.
Hammer.
I've seen him in. He's always good, and of course,
Armie Hammer reminds me of Brendan Fraser in this, and he's really, really solid.
But with the addition of literally genetically modified human, like perfection gene, where you look at him, go like, God damn, the handsomeness of this guy, and he can play goofy. He can also play menacing. He's done a lot of good stuff.
Serious. I saw him in the RBG movie. He's very good in that.
No, I mean
the problem with Armie Hammer does not have to do with acting or casting.
No,
I think Brendan and John will agree with me that if this had been executed better, he would have been better served by what he's bringing.
No, I don't think he's at all the problem. Depp's a massive problem. I think I would have kept him as Lone Ranger. When they cast him as Lone Ranger, I thought, oh yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
He's
well, except for him being blonde, but yeah.
Yeah, I was furious.
Well, now Brandon, his hair was darker in this movie, so are you?
It was darker. They did go darker.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously, I was enraged.
Seriously,
about that. Brendan was taking to social media boards to be like, a blonde Lone Ranger in my life.
He's a brunette and he has blue eyes.
I don't know if our audience will recall the famous "Not My Lone Ranger" hashtag campaign, but Brendan created that.
Well, Brendan was also part of the Not James Blonde movement against Daniel Craig as well.
Yeah, very
famously.
much.
Yeah, nightmarish.
Mm-hmm. Only problem with those movies. That is the only problem with those movies.
Oh, Brendan.
I love those movies, but it's
Bond.
got a big problem, and it's blonde hair.
Brendan, Sam Spade's supposed to be blonde, and he never is.
Oh.
Yeah.
The blonde Satan, that's what he's referred to by Hammett in those
That's
books.
absolutely correct. Yes, the blonde Satan.
It's almost like it doesn't matter. I don't know. That's interesting.
One would argue.
Yeah,
I would say
it's maybe the least important thing about the character. But no, I think
iconography. It's all iconography.
Yeah, I've never once cared ever about that, but that's fine. But Armie Hammer, of course, was cast as Batman as well, which is very interesting. There's one moment in this movie. Once again, there are beats throughout this movie. I don't think I like sections of it maybe as much as you do, Robin, but there are moments where I'm like, ooh, yeah. And he does have that cool Batman-y moment where the muzzle flash of the gun is when he's attacking the guys in the mine. It lights him up and he hits the guy with the. That's great.
I would constantly thrill to moments that worked for me,
but
then constantly be brutally depressed.
Yes, but that's the thing is that I had the exact same.
It was like a constant thing.
I had the exact same reactions I did the first time I saw it. Which is, yes. And the thing I was bringing up like 40 minutes ago about the reviews was, I agree with them when they talk about, by the time we get to that great third act, and it's delivering the Lone Ranger movie I want. I mean, like when the kid throws
the
him
Tell overture, and you see him rear the horseback,
and he leaps
riding on roofs.
Yeah, he's riding on the train when he and Barry Pepper are shooting at each other across the stuff.
Right.
When the kid throws him the silver bullet, and he puts it. He's got the one
bullet. He catches
and I'm going like,
I'm
going like, finally, the music's pumping. Everything is working. This is the Lone Ranger movie. I agree with the one of the reviews I read that was just like, but by that point, I hate this movie so much that when they're actually delivering the Lone Ranger movie I want, I don't care. It's too little, too late, and that's very much how I feel. It's so late in the game when I'm like, this is the Lone Ranger movie. Why is this 2 hours into this?
Another thing I loved in this movie, I usually have a problem with bad villain deaths. Like if they're juicing those villains up to be really horrible, when they die, if it's not really great, I really have a huge problem with it.
I'm right there with you on
that. And this one had great villain deaths.
It did. I mean, obviously the thing with
Barry Pepper dies, when William Fisher dies, and when Tom Wilkinson
has a great
goes down and is buried under all the silver. That's great.
Although I will say, they do the exact same thing in Mask of Zorro. The exact same villain death.
Oh, well, yeah, sure.
With the gold mine. It's the exact same
John,
thing.
It's a good death.
It is good, but it's literally...
A good death is worth repeating.
Stuart Wilson goes up... The thing that's actually really cool in Mask of Zorro is they take out both villains in one. If you remember the end of Mask of Zorro.
That's true.
Stuart Wilson gets tied to the thing of gold that then after... Antonio Banderas runs through the army guy, that cart of gold then falls on that guy, pulling Stuart Wilson with him. Mask of Zorro is a better movie, you guys. And stay tuned for that season.
Suggesting that these screenwriters are stealing from themselves?
100%.
Okay.
And I think these guys
right. Which brings up the thing.
These guys are good writers.
You must write a Western. Must there always be a General Custer knockoff to also be bad as well?
Well, I did think that when I'd forgotten about Barry Pepper, and I'm going this guy's a lot like that army villain in Mask of Zorro.
Right.
Although that guy was cooler. If you remember, he kept severed heads in jars of wine. Because that movie more expertly put in those darker beats because it never got as goofy, which I think.
Well, that was actually based on actual Western lore.
There you go.
That's the thing is that what's his name, Murrieta, who the real historical one, supposedly when he was finally taken down, his head was put in a jar and kept in a saloon.
Yeah.
So that was just them doing the research and.
No, the thing is,
sometimes you'd parade the body of a dead outlaw around.
When you talk about they have a lot to answer for this, they do, but also like I see everything is like Depp has too much say. Disney wants this more piracy. I do think. I mean, these guys are good writers. Obviously, they are. You know, they have to be. They've crafted too many movies I like but like they're also guns for hire. That have been asked to go, can you give us Old West pirates? And also maybe put a guy in a mask.
Can you give us that Barton Fink feeling?
I mean, I think in some ways, they were kind of ruined by pirates, right? Like, it's sort of just like, oh, you guys are the pirates guys? You want to do more pirates?
Well, yeah.
And I would also tell you that if you want to see a better Western by Gore Verbinski, watch Rango.
Oh,
Rango's great.
I couldn't agree more. Rango... I feel like it was successful, but I feel like it's underappreciated. Rango's great. Verbinski, once again, and you see it in this movie. He's a good director. He just got buried, once again, kind of like these writers, by the pirates thing. Go check out a tiny little movie, The Weatherman. I think is great.
I don't have to do anything you say.
The Nicolas Cage movie.
No, Brennan, you have to do it.
Yeah. The Weatherman
John
is great.
Made you sign the
I don't
paper.
think it fully works, but I think The Mexican has a lot of really good stuff in it. I don't think it's like a great movie, but I think,
you're not supposed to say The Mexican anymore.
Hi, man.
The Latinx.
Yeah. Don't cry in front of the Mexicans. Speaking of the guy who loves this movie. But no, the other thing I thought that was so dead on in one of the reviews, and it was to a point you were making earlier, Brendan, is I have it here. The simple yet overly elaborate plot. That is
a
perfect description of this movie. It is incredibly simple but needlessly complicated at the same time.
Yep.
And you're just going like,
and it's just too damn long.
And the movie, no, that's the thing is
and the rent is too damn high.
Well, that's the thing.
Wait,
like when I clicked when I looked at the time code at one point in this movie, and I'm going, there's an hour and a half left. How?
Yeah.
Like he's finally got the mask on, and there's another full feature-length film going.
I finally watched this for this podcast, and I can assure you, gentlemen, I will never watch this again.
No, I had no intention of watching this again, other than I might watch that train sequence again because it does fill me with joy. And I will actually say the use of William Tell Overture is good, but I will say another high point. I think the Zimmer score is great. I think Zimmer kills it as well.
I think so too. I thought the score was good.
He kind of quotes Leone a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I thought was fine.
Every time it really blares with like, he has this great sort of downbeat, mournful horns, kind of Leone-esque, and I'm going like, oh, Zimmer's scoring a better movie. Like the music, this should be going with a better film.
I thought it was a little the way they kept interjecting with the man in the mask.
Yeah, I was like, Merle, get out of here.
I thought that was.
I was wondering if anybody was going to bring up how much they missed Merle Haggard.
Well,
I'll say this. I'll take Merle Haggard over old age makeup Johnny Depp. Jesus, that stuff is bad. Also,
what this needed was, instead of it being narrated by
ancient
Tonto. Instead of the Johnny Depp's framing sequence, if it hadn't been Tonto, if it instead had been Dan Jr. talking to Britt about his
that would have been something
uncle.
Actually. By the way,
that would have been great.
Cool. Did we point out the fact that the Tom we mentioned it a second ago?
I keep saying
so weird that Tom Wilkinson is in both of these.
Spinoff podcast welcoming Wilkinson because he was in.
I should mention because I love him as Carmine Falcone in Batman Begins.
So good,
he's great.
I could shoot you right here
I'll
in this spa.
One of the reasons why I remember listening to an interview he did on Fresh Air. And one of the reasons, besides the money, but he always brought like a lot to these pulp.
No, he's not phoning it in here either. This character is pretty underwritten,
not at all.
But he's killing it in every scene.
But he said to I think it was to Terry Gross that he said this is why he got into acting, was that he's a huge fan of, since he was a little kid, these kinds of pulpy stories.
That's great.
To him, of course he would do Batman, and of course he would do Green Hornet, and of course he would do the Lone Ranger.
Grew up with it. He's great in all of them.
I love unabashed nerds. God bless him.
Talk about some of the. By the way, I'm just looking at the cast list. W. Earl Brown is done real dirty in this movie. He's in there for 2 seconds and then killed, and I was like, why even bring in somebody of his caliber?
Why or Leon Rippey, who plays the scout, the old friend of the brother's dad.
Yeah, and then I was also, because the reason the Cavendish gang is also so weird. The cross-dressing guy doesn't read well now, right?
No, doesn't read very well.
When he first put the bonnet on, I thought like, oh, he's like a crazy bad guy doing a bit. But then the fact that he kept putting on women's clothes, and then he has some line about
feels the need to be embarrassed and go like, I'm just playing around.
Yeah, like, what is this? Is this meant to be funny? It's not.
It's supposed to be hilarious.
Again, the 8-year-old in the audience.
Well, the 8-year-olds in the audience also find it funny when the Lone Ranger gets dragged through poop. You know, I mean, like that kind of
stuff.
He sure does. You're just going like, my God. By the way,
I'll tell you what.
By the way, $250 million budget, $260 worldwide.
Yeah,
people lost their job. I mean, this was a disaster. Like I said, this was. If John Carter was bad, this one said hold my beer. Because this one, they did go all out on merch.
They did.
I worked in a comic book store around this time.
Yes. Humble brag.
I know, really threw it. But like, no, I mean, when I say this, I'm not literally. we could not give away Lone Ranger stuff. We'd marked it down to like 75, 90% off, and no one wanted it.
On the Disney
that
Infinity,
stuff is probably still in that store.
The Disney Infinity video game system.
Oh yeah. I used to collect those figures.
You could play as Lone Ranger, and Tonto was supposed to be another figure, but I don't think it ever came out because that's how fast
this thing was pretty immediately. Word was, this is abysmal. This is not. Yep. We talk about John Carter was met with like, oh, kind of disappointing. Doesn't work in places. Should have been better. This one was like, everyone.
One thing that really annoys me about that argument too is people laying on it. The filmmakers themselves and actors. In defense of their own movie.
Okay, I'm glad that was where I was going with this. So go ahead, Brendan.
We were prejudged based on all the word about how much it cost.
Not this
time.
So
people came to the theater already pissed at the movie for being so expensive.
Not this time.
And I sit there going like, if the movie had worked, they wouldn't have given a flying how much it cost.
No.
And like, bottom line, guys,
now costs a lot.
I mean, literally,
money.
You do have things
a long time to make.
You do,
and it's really great. Yeah. Every single time Coppola recuts it, it still works, and it still works great.
Yeah, like where Bruckheimer's going, like hey man, they reviewed the budget, not the movie. You read those.
Yeah,
reviews.
That thing.
And it's like, no man. By the way, I did read the reviews. Some of them mentioned the budget, but most were talking about this thing's a tonal mess. It's way too long. It's as a story,
Johnny
it's
Depp's
all over the place. Depp is awful.
Not since Mickey Rooney as Mr. Uniyoshi in Breakfast at Tiffany's have I been so outraged.
White man, I protest.
But the thing is, I think the thing is, at the end of the day, too, all that stuff just rolled up into, all those problems just rolled up into, why would anyone want to see this?
Yeah.
And just, they didn't. I mean, this thing bombed like nobody's business.
Or a great Lone Ranger movie.
Well,
because we've never had one.
It's a little bit like the Fantastic Four thing.
Great series too.
I feel like that's the way to probably approach it now.
They could do one like they did that Zorro, though that was, of course, international production.
Yeah,
but they could do
that same approach.
Zorro
that Zorro show is great.
So, all right, listen, everybody. I know this is our last episode ever.
Yeah.
Watch the Zorro Spanish language TV show that was just on Prime.
It's really good. No, it's
amazing. It hits a lot of the right notes, and so I enjoyed it quite a bit.
I thought the same thing, Brendan, about watching this last night. I'm going, much like the Fantastic Four, this doesn't seem that hard. It's it feels like you should be able to pull off a Lone Ranger movie pretty easily. And twice now we've had just
if you made a Zorro movie that works.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be able to make?
What's interesting is
I will say they are different.
If you made the Incredibles. Why can't you make the Fantastic Four? What is the fucking problem?
It's true. They're different enough characters. You can't just port over.
Well, but I do think there's
a Zorro into a Lone Ranger. But
but there's an approach there that is similar. The rip roaring pulp adventure in 1800s. Because I mean, I do think it's very interesting that right after Mask of Zorro, Columbia did want to go right into a Lone Ranger, but they go, hey, Zorro worked for us. Let's do Lone Ranger. And the fact that didn't happen, I think, is interesting. But literally, they were talking about, like, can we take that same tone? Although I will say, I don't think we would have liked that because Columbia's idea was to make Tonto a woman and a love interest for the Lone Ranger. Which I'm like, don't do that. No. But I also get
obviously they've been breeding my brother's fan fiction because if you just ignore
Kimosabe.
No, and I totally get that actually is also a reaction to Mask of Zorro. I feel like where it's like, ooh, people liked how sexy Mask of Zorro was. Maybe we could sex up Lone Ranger a little bit and have like a no, that's a bad impulse, but I do.
The Dynamite Lone Ranger comic, which then also became Lone Ranger and Tonto, was good, but they
do that.
They changed some stuff around, but it was deadly serious, which of course I like. But the whole thing is they do a deal where Dan Senior's widow actually hooks up with Tonto.
Yes,
and there's like John Reed is a little like, really? and he's kind of jealous, and it becomes a wedge between them, and he's like, "Oh, just be happy, whatever." But I would say
not that plot specifically, but that the Dynamite Lone Ranger had come out a few years before this movie, and I remember when I saw this movie, I was like, "Why didn't they just do the Dynamite comic? Was right there." Like that's it's still set in period, but it's a modern lens on it. I think their Tonto was really elegantly done.
Are you guys talking about Snake of Iron?
That was part of that, but we're talking about specifically that was a mini series. Snake of Iron is good. Yeah, that was the Chuck Dixon one. We're talking about the Brett Matthews ongoing Lone Ranger.
I think I've read
had the John Cassidy covers.
Oh,
oh my God, yeah.
R.I.P. John Cassidy.
What a huge fucking one of the best, man.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Those were...
so my radical hot suggestion for how to fix all of this, because I agree the Dynamite comic books are just great.
Yeah,
our Dynamite. I would say the guy who just won a MacArthur Fellowship grant, a MacArthur Genius Award, should take on the Lone Ranger as a series, and that guy is Sterling Harjo.
Oh yeah,
he's the guy who did Reservation Dogs.
Yeah,
and I would be blown away if he couldn't figure out a way to crack that code to make both Tonto and John Reed interesting three-dimensional characters in a genre framework.
My hope would be that if an indigenous, a Native American author or filmmaker decided to do Lone Ranger, which of course is fine, I hope it wouldn't be reactionary, and then therefore it's like Tonto. It becomes like without a clue thing, where it's like, oh, Lone Ranger's an idiot who barely stays alive, and Tonto, of course, is the guy who's got to save his ass constantly. I'm kind of like,
I think the approach, and I think this movie fails on this point, is like. Why this partnership? What do they individually bring to this thing? And this movie doesn't do a great job of that either, because I think by making like, oh, well, Tonto's fucking insane, you're like, oh, well, that's a weird choice. Like, you know,
Tonto's insane, and John Reed doesn't want to use a gun for the most.
And you're just like, and you're just like, what do you? Because like I said, I think that would be when you talk about that would be my big thing is like, okay, what are each of their strengths? How do they each aid this mission of justice?
Right.
How do you spotlight what Tonto's good at versus what John Reed is good at? This movie just I don't actually know why these two would like stay together. They both have a personal, as you bring up, Brendan, they both have a personal stake in this specific mission. Why would these two ride together following this? John Reed, get away from Tonto. He's obviously an unhinged maniac.
And why would a carnival have
John,
a living?
To their credit, they take about half an hour to get him away from Tonto.
Yeah, which is also a great decision.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, it's almost that's I mean the whole thing where Tonto is sent to the mines and all that stuff, and then and while we're at it, let's drag Chinese miners in there too to get some more historical atrocities in this
and then
romp.
but at the same time, let's have a Chinese lady assistant to Wilkinson's character who drugs, who gives roofies to women that he wants. I just.
Oh wait, was that problematic?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just there's just so many things in this movie where you're trying to go like, who thought that was you thought that was a good idea? You have all this. I think that is part of it too. Is like when they're talking about they're reviewing the budget. I'm like, well, I think it is kind of fair to go. You had all this money, all this time, all these resources, and you made this. I think that is a fair reaction. Army Hammer.
My question would be: you reviewed the budget on the Lone Ranger, but you didn't do it on Armageddon, or
but Armageddon's great.
Harbor,
but Armageddon's great.
No, it's
Armageddon's
not.
great.
It's
Robin.
made by Satan.
It's really fun.
The devil made that movie.
Also,
Robin, John saw that film directly out of his mother's womb, so it is just.
I think that's about
in
the
his
eighth
blood.
movie you've mentioned that I saw immediately upon birth. They just
Oh
screened
my God.
them.
It will never not be cool to
You
him
saw so many
because
movies when you were born.
First thing he saw.
Armageddon. I do really like Armageddon, and Fichtner's in that too. But
I don't want to close my eyes.
Don't want to fall asleep because. But it's It's in the Criterion Collection, Robin. As is The Rock.
Things in there.
As I've explained many times, they did that deal in order so that they could also do the Wes Anderson deal.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows that. It happened at virtually the same time, and there's reason.
I've got that Criterion Armageddon, and that commentary is gold.
On Mars in the Criterion Collection.
Oh my God!
But the thing I was the Army Hammer quote. The Army Hammer had a great quote about the budget of this movie when he was just talking about the amount of money they were spending. There's that scene where Wilkinson spins the watch on the chain and catches it.
Yeah.
And he goes, they literally flew in the world's greatest yo-yo master to teach him how to do that. He goes, that's the kind of money they were spending on this movie. They were like, for one shot where he has to do this, let's get the greatest yo-yo person, fly them to the set and teach Wilkinson. And that's where you're just going like, see, that's a needless use of money. That's just pure hubris.
That reminds me of when Jerry Lewis was interviewed about how he met his second wife. And he met her. She was a disco dancer in the sequence in Hardly Working, that Jerry Lewis movie.
Wow. Okay.
And they were doing they're doing a parody of Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah.
And Jerry Lewis, every single time I asked them to get me the finest. We were shooting in Florida, and I asked them to get me the finest, not just disco dancer, but the finest dancer in the state of Florida. And they found this woman, and I didn't see her until we started rehearsing, and she comes dancing up to me, and I said, oh, that's the one. That's my next wife.
Oh,
and it's like,
beautiful.
Really, the finest dancer in the state of Florida?
Find me the greatest maker of mashed potatoes on the eastern coast.
Yeah, that's the kind of thinking here as well. We're just like
it's ridiculous. Why do you no? That's not a.
In this scene in which they are in an Old West bathtub, I want only pure spring water from the place where they get the Fiji.
It kind of feels like that on this point, and I think this movie.
They had a trailer just for the espressos that.
Yeah. Well,
Depp required for his.
Depp got $20 million for this racist bullshit.
Wow.
I can't, and they still made
Bonjour, Parisian chalet.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we also know that guy burned through all that money like nobody's business.
Yeah,
sure.
I do like when he was suing his management for like, how could you let me spend all that money? And then their countersuit was just like, we fucking told you to stop. What are you talking about?
He and Nicolas Cage have a lot in common.
Yeah. Nicolas Cage has paid off all of his debts, man. The
but he had to sell off Action Comics #1 and a dinosaur skull and an island.
3 mansions in New Orleans.
Yeah, but we're back in the Cage-assance, so we're good now. We're all good now.
Yeah, I'm all right.
But yeah, just look at Depp's career post this though. He goes from this to, do you remember Transcendence? Oof. Right. He was and then the aforementioned Mordecai into the
tourist.
Woods. The tourist into the woods. He was horrible in that. The second,
he was okay. It was all right. It just the traditional casting is the wolf is also one of the princes, and
and actually Pine I feel like is the high point in that movie. Pine's really fucking good in Into the Woods.
It's great.
Let's not have this talk.
The second Alice in Wonderland, and then of course the very successful his performance as Grindelwald in the Fantastic Beasts movies. No controversy surrounding that at all.
Nope.
But I hope he's very happy with the slew of French films he's making now. Good.
We
for him.
should probably get to highs and lows. Let's let Depp lie.
Let's let Depp lie.
Never. I'll never let. Well, I'm
okay. I'll end the Depp conversation with this. If you want to see a good Western with Johnny Depp in it, watch Jim Jarmusch's Dead Man.
Dead Man.
Dead Man's great.
Dead Man's
and
great.
watch it on a double feature with Jarmusch's Ghost Dog because there's a nice
Ghost
reference
Dog.
back to
Ghost
it.
Dog is also amazing.
Yep.
Really.
No, I only bag him because it just makes me sad because there was a time he was absolutely one of my favorite actors.
Absolutely agree.
And like I said, aside from whatever personal issues, the guy just stopped at a certain point caring about his job is my issue more than anything.
Yeah.
It just,
Absolutely.
once the Pirates movies started compiling, and yeah. Anyway, all right, here we go. Highs and lows. Oh, by the way, before I get to the IMDb user highs and lows, there apparently was one critic, Matt Zoller Seitz of RogerEbert.com.
Yeah, I know that guy.
Says that for all its... I don't agree with this review at all. I'll just read the little snippet from it here. For all its miscalculations, this is a personal picture. Violent and sweet, clever and goofy. It's as obsessive and overbearing as Steven Spielberg's 1941, and I'll bet as likely to be reevaluated 20 years from now and described as misunderstood. I don't think so.
No.
I can't.
No.
Also, personal. No. There are moments. I mean, Verbinski's engaged. This is. You can totally feel all the studio fingerprints all over this thing, and Depp and Bruckheimer, and No.
Yeah, the cash machine overrode any personal time. But like I've already said, Verbinski obviously showing a lot of influences that he really loves. I think he loves making westerns.
I would love for him to make more westerns without all the
it was beautiful.
It. Yeah, no, it's a beautifully shot movie. I just wish that the script lived up to that. And All right, here we go. This is from IMDb user Tish85. Who calls the movie terrible drivel. Strap in, fellas. This is a long one, of course. Here we go.
Of course.
The Bruckheimer Verbinski team is at it once again. And once again, they have completely failed. All right. I just want to... All right. They have each made good movies, too. That's not just, All right. Sorry. Yeah. This is so typical of the Disney franchise to take a legendary show, write a mediocre script that has nothing to do with the actual Lone Ranger, and get a big name like Johnny Depp to star in it. Let's face it, with Johnny Depp starring, people are going to see the movie no matter how terrible it is. Not true, but that's interesting. Simply because,
back then,
he's in it. This is kind of the movie that proved that's not the case. But this is something that Disney does very well. They take a show that's more than 30 years old, 1957 in this case. Well, older than that, but okay. They're talking about the TV show. That's fine. And they remake it into a movie because the majority of their fan base is under 30 years old. So they have no idea how accurate the movie actually is.
What other shows have they done, TV shows?
I know. I don't actually know what he's talking about.
I have no idea what she's talking about.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily a Disney.
My Favorite Martian? I think it's the only other one I can think of.
Was that a Disney?
That was Disney, yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Okay.
But I got a point.
I think that might be it.
Those two.
And there were only there were only like 12 years between those two movies. Okay. First of all,
don't forget the Mr. Ed movie. That was definitely Disney.
The classic. Was that Depp?
No, Brendan, hot to trot. I keep telling you, it's not a Mr. Ed movie. Why don't you listen to me?
Why did they lie to me?
All right.
In the credits, he's clearly listed as Ed.
First of all, the real Lone Ranger was one of the bravest men alive. Not a sniveling little wimp as depicted in this movie. The characters, including Tonto, look nothing like the actual characters in the original Lone Ranger. What's up with the thick, crumbling face paint and the dead bird on his head? He looks more like a pygmy that just got off the first plane from the Congo in Africa.
Okay. Wow.
Way to go, Dorothy Parker.
As always, this person's words, not mine, I want to add. But of course, this movie is nothing but another 2.5-hour Pirates of the Caribbean movie with characters dressed as cowboys and Indians. This is because Bruckheimer and Verbinski have one style and one style only. They are not talented enough to expand, so all of their movies have the exact same recipe. Good guys fighting the bad guys for a damsel in distress. This is me talking. I would argue that's a lot of action movies and stuff like that.
And to sit, I hate to defend Jerry Bruckheimer of all people.
Oh well, that's interesting. Yeah, you would expect me to be arguing for that because I do love Bruckheimer, but
I don't. But I mean, she's. Okay, never mind. Go on.
He's painting with a broad brush.
Well, it's also, I do think it's like, Bruckheimer made a lot of movies before Pirates that weren't like Pirates, but that's okay.
Right. That was my point. Is that he obviously is in it for the dollar, but at the same time, he has different styles that have occurred.
Yeah.
Over his history. There was the Flashdance style, and then the
Michael Bay style, and
and then this was the Pirates era. We're just in that era.
Yeah, exactly.
This movie is such a flop in the hugest way. It saddens me that they spent $250 million to make it. I'm guessing most of this money went to pay the salaries of the actors. This is definitely one of those movies you will spend the last hour looking at your watch every 5 minutes waiting for it to end. Don't get me wrong, I think Johnny Depp was a wonderful actor. But the fact that he keeps accepting roles in these mediocre Disney movies simply says that he is a complete sellout.
Wow.
It's hard for me to discern exactly what stereotype he's tackling with this oddball incarnation of Tonto, which has all the eccentricity of Captain Jack Sparrow, but only half of the wit. Depp has become another sellout who will take any movie for X amount of money. There is no artistic integrity involved. Armie Hammer, who I also enjoy, does not have the acting ability to pull off a lead role such as this. He is much better used in co-starring roles, such as his role in J. Edgar. Which is a very
wait, what?
Yeah, very.
I mean, he's
role.
Fine in J. Edgar. He's
as much
like
as
I said, he's quite good. But
yeah, I mean, he was quite good in everything. The man didn't end his career for lack of talent, as we've said before.
The problem with Armie Hammer is not acting ability.
The problem is he can't stop eating people. It's just
that's the problem.
Yeah, he's just got a taste
and
for human
texting about it.
Yeah,
over and over.
Yeah.
To people who don't want to hear it.
Last paragraph.
I've got the fever for the flavor of somebody over there.
Last paragraph for this, guys. The most important aspect of the original Lone Ranger was that it always had a lesson that each episode taught us, something of ethics and morality. This movie does nothing of the kind. It is simply a Western with people blowing stuff up. If you're a typical Disney sheep who will pay good money to see any movie that Disney throws at you, you will probably love this movie. This is what they count on, and is the reason they keep making these awful films. If you are a preteen, you will probably love this movie. If you're one of those people who worship Johnny Depp and will pay to see anything he is in, you will probably love this movie. If you want to see a movie that has any artistic integrity, or a movie that's a great story and plot, you will hate this movie. If you grew up watching the original Lone Ranger, you will be sadly disappointed once again at the mockery that Disney has made of a pure classic. I can understand why Depp is in disguise and Hammer wears a mask. I would be embarrassed to be in this film as well. 1 out of 10 stars. Ooh,
wow.
I gave it to them.
Wow, Tish.
Oh, yeah.
Tish. I would give Tish's review 5 bajillion.
Yes.
Tish, how are things at home? Good? Everything okay?
But I will say, something I've been doing now is I click on the profile to see what other reviews they've written. Raves, and I actually do like this movie, but it's just very funny that they hated this. But loved Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters.
Wow.
Okay.
Which I do enjoy that movie.
John,
but
you and my wife have that in common.
Oh, well, it's fun. I'm not saying like it's a classic, but that movie, unlike this, understands exactly what it is. It just goes. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Let's look at somebody who really really enjoed this film.
You actually went from low to high on this one.
I always kind of go with the more the side we land on first.
Okay.
And then give
I got you.
That's how
Right.
I'll accept that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, this one's also long, but I feel like that's fair because
fair.
This comes from M. Chark, who titles their review, "Loved it, a good modern retelling of a classic." Okay. Why The Lone Ranger is the best movie of the year. I fondly remember a much simpler time when the age of radio programs was fading into memory, and in that dying flicker, the name that stood for justice. Like the television of that era, the good guys wore white and the bad guys wore black and twirled their mustaches.
Mm-hmm.
Director Gore Verbinski's Lone Ranger brings back those feelings in spades. In a summer full of flawed heroes...
Days of yesteryear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a summer full of flawed heroes, a narcissist tin man, an alien god whose rampage created untold casualties, and an unnecessary romp through the least realistic zombie apocalypse, based on the book about the most realistic one. Well, Narcissist Tin Man, I don't remember. But he's obviously talking about Man of Steel and World War Z and the other ones.
Iron Man, maybe?
Oh, yeah. You're probably right. It was probably that.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yes, I think Iron Man 3 actually was out at this time.
And Iron Man?
Yeah.
Of some sort?
It is refreshing to see a true hero on the big screen. Armie Hammer's Lone Ranger character isn't a good shot, and he isn't particularly witty or good with the women. However, he isn't bad at these things either. And more importantly, his incredible moral fiber shows through in every scene and never wavers. Johnny Depp's Tonto dragged me to this movie, but Armie Hammer's Lone Ranger is why I'm going back to see it again.
Oh, boy. She's the one.
Yeah, speaking of Johnny Depp, let's be honest. I want to see Captain Jack Sparrow. Johnny Depp delivers with a character that is at the same time unique and yet strikingly reminiscent. Depp and Verbinski treat the Native American aspects of the movie with respect. Many of the jokes are based on taking old cliches and poking holes in them. Depp's makeup as Tonto is phenomenal. The movie opens with a display of makeup artistry at the Sideshow Museum that is almost unbelievable, and it sets the tone for Tonto throughout.
It was good. The old age was good.
I will say this movie was nominated for 2 Academy Awards. One of them was for makeup, and the other one was for visual effects. And I think both fair. Okay, sure.
I think it's fine. It reminded me a little bit of Little Big Man, which I like.
Yeah. The thing is, like everything in this movie, technically very impressive. I don't like it though. I like the scene, but yes, the makeup is very good. The story isn't a new one. It's the same story you will find in Zorro movies and spaghetti westerns. You know how those two are always put together.
Every single time. Yeah,
it's a classic tale of evil out to conquer the world and good trying to stop them with a dash of murder and revenge. The difference is that you have this shining knight of a character who refuses to seek revenge, but instead insists on bringing the bad guys to justice. They're really focused on the idea of like, I hate complex protagonists. The villain is Butch Cavendish, played by William Fichtner, who begins the classical, disfigured and evil gunslinger, and then reveals himself to be worse than that. A cannibal, I guess, is the That's he reveal it pretty quickly? He's doing that, but all right.
Yeah, it's not a big reveal.
Yeah,
they talk about it,
and they allude to it before he does it.
Yeah,
like they go,
like any modern superhero. I don't know why super is in parentheses. Like any modern super
in the case of this, he's not
movie.
super.
Yeah, the corny one-liners and silly names are used sparingly. Are they? Okay. Some of the Lone Ranger's most famous catchphrases appeared only once, but they used them all, and the crowd cheered each time. Okay. One point before I get back to the rest of this. One thing I remembered, like, almost vomiting in the theater and still had this reaction when he does the Hi-O Silver, and then Tonto goes, "Don't ever do that again." And I was like, all right.
I hated that.
Just punch me.
I hated that so much.
Hey, Disney, just punch me in the face. You know what it is? Like, you like the Lone Ranger? Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't like that.
That was some bullshit.
I was scared.
I've never. We always talk about when you're.
Were you crying, Brendan?
When you're ashamed to be like a comic book movie. We always talk about Brendan. I don't think I've ever seen a more naked example of that in a movie where they're just like, "Oh, we just did the thing," only to immediately go, "That's fucking stupid," right?
Yeah.
No, man. It's like, and also it's another thing. You can't have it both ways. You can't heroically play the William Tell overture and then say Hi-O Silver is stupid. No.
Yeah, did they? This is the second time I've seen it, but nobody said who was that masked man, did they?
No.
The
that would have been dumb.
Cool postmodern take on it was constantly characters throughout the movie are, what's the deal with the mask? Like even the Comanche elder chief guy is like, what's the deal with the mask?
It was a cute running gag, but nobody said it. And God, never mind. Go on.
The other thing I was going to say though on that same point that I thought was very interesting, there's the whole bit at the end of the movie where he's the whole running joke I put in parentheses about him trying to come up with what his name should be. 18 people have already called him the Lone Ranger at that point.
Yeah.
How does he not? I'm like, I'm sorry. No, he's clearly already called the Lone Ranger. So I don't know. Anyway.
Right. I addressed that in my fan fiction.
Much like the Man of Steel, the Lone Ranger is called by his character's real name, John Reed, throughout the movie, giving the movie a less serial and more realistic feel. Yeah, that really grounded it. Okay. Silver, the Lone Ranger's white stallion, makes an appearance as a suspected supernatural element. Like all such elements in this movie, they are carefully crafted, so the viewer may decide if they are real or imagined. I don't know what movie this person saw. Silver, called only Horse throughout most of the movie, takes on the role of C-3PO or Jimmy Olsen.
Oh, Jesus God.
The horse is Jimmy Olsen?
Yeah, because of the bow tie, Robin. The bow tie.
Well, I thought it was
also kept taking pictures
the horse
of
had
everything
a signal watch that could use only the Lone Ranger can hear.
Z.
G, Mr. White. Okay, so anyway.
Don't call me Chief.
Takes on the role of C-3PO. Jimmy Olsen injects a good amount of humor into the movie when Depp's Tonto isn't stealing the show with his antics. By the way, antics. Antics is the perfect description. Tonto's antics. These often involve the crow on his head, whose origins explained to justify his actions, and serves to confirm or rebuke the strongest supernatural elements of the movie. By the way, the supernatural stuff is not handled well. Sorry.
No.
Anyway, Ruth Wilson plays the strong-spirited Rebecca Reed, sought after by just about everyone who runs across until the smoke clears and her ending is revealed. Her ending is just that she stays in a town and the Lone Ranger.
Her ending is I will go on being a widow.
Yeah, I'm just going to raise this
my
kid
son
by myself now. My life's probably going to be tough.
The haunting conclusion to her character's arc.
Yeah. For a movie that roams from fighting acrobatics on horseback to atop trains or both, the characters are always crystal clear and the backgrounds are always impressive. While there is the bare minimum of required unbelievable scenes, much of the movie is fairly down-to-earth action. I don't think that's true, but a modern retelling of an old story. Many of the jokes and themes have been updated, and while it tugs at the heart like the stories of old, it is shown in a modern frame. The most important element of this movie for myself was that they captured the spirit of the Lone Ranger. He had his friend Tonto, his horse Silver. He used silver bullets. He wore a mask and he stood for justice. He fought the bad guy without becoming one or even needing to be a flawed hero. This may indicate the beginning of the end of the reign of flawed heroes, which started with The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. 10 out of 10 stars.
Wow.
I guess the movie hadn't come out yet because this thing was
what was the name of that particular reviewer?
That was M. Chark.
Wow. M. Chark is on drugs.
I will say, though, very interesting that they, after all that stuff about, I don't like flawed heroes, I don't like that, click their thing, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, their title, this was a masterpiece.
Fuck them.
So I'm like, wow.
Now, M. Chark,
I
would be interested to know what the budget for that review was, because it was easily as long as the film it was talking about.
And it cost almost as much,
You know what?
Yeah.
The budget was increased when M. Chark had to fly in a poet to write the phrase about Rebecca Reed's characters.
Oh, what is that? What was that bullshit? What character? that would be Rebecca Reed.
I was like, you put in about 27 words there when 3 would do.
I gotta say, Rebecca Reed is something both movies those were nothing. Her part in that. I'm not saying there's no way to write her. I do think that's where, when you talk about a show, Robin, side characters like Rebecca could be greatly expanded in a longer
and
if this had been a series,
there were episodes where the Lone Ranger was working with his nephew was hanging out with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If it were a series like the original radio show or the TV show, they're not just like for his origin. Mm-hmm. He did keep checking in on her, and also Dan, and Dan would ride with him, and and then would inspire his kid to become The Green Hornet.
The Green Hornet, because they're related.
It's so
his
cool.
great uncle, his Lone Ranger. It's all there.
And all the money that the Reeds have comes from the silver mine.
Well, guys,
from the silver mine where the silver comes from, and the bullets.
Oh. I also like when they were doing the thing about like it captured the spirit of the Lone Ranger, and then proceeds to just be like, it had all the Lone Ranger. He wore a mask and used silver bullets. Like, well, geez, if that's the bar by which you judge the spirit of the Lone Ranger, man, they've always been doing it well. Then I bet they love Legend of the Lone Ranger.
So you believe the spirit of the character is in the materials the character has on them.
They really captured the spirit of Superman. He wore a red cape in this one. You guys,
yeah.
Really nailed
Brennan, for you, isn't the spirit of Superman the shorts?
Yeah.
Yep. Those trunks are everything you need to know about that character.
That's the whole thing. Man, but he doesn't even fly in this one. Who cares? He's got the trunks.
The spirit.
Who cares? He's wearing the trunks.
That's all that matters, baby.
The spirit of Batman, of course, is the ears.
To sum up,
the ears are the Batman.
Yeah. To sum
Tall
up,
or short, it's all in the.
I will just say, to sum up on this
Spider-Man's spirit is in the underarm webs.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually super happy when they included those, of course, in the Tom Holland movie. But to sum this up, this movie deserves the reputation it has. Is my ultimate review of this. This is not. There's not a hidden gem here. There are high points in the movie, but the criticism was dead on this one.
Yep.
No, I will tell you that I first saw this film when I bought a used Blu-ray disc from a Red Box.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe
shortly after it came out.
Yeah, maybe the best way to, if you're going to own this movie, I feel like that's appropriate.
Yep. And I'm telling you right now, I've seen it twice and I overpaid. So
yeah.
No, I left the theater on this thing going, I'll never watch that again, and I haven't until now when I had to. Yeah. And I stand by my exact same opinion. This movie is not good, even though it does have a banger of an ending.
I thought it was worth 3 stars in my Letterboxd review, but I did not click like because I did not.
I gave it 2 stars in my Letterboxd.
I saw it. Didn't write anything.
Yeah. 2 stars is probably where
it's hard for Brendan to write with his knuckles.
What kind of dig is that? My brother is a Neanderthal.
Push buttons on keyboard.
Bad.
Yeah.
This has none of the integrity of Legend of Lone Ranger.
Gentlemen,
where is Merle Haggard?
It's been quite the journey through these pulp and comic strip movies. This has been quite the ride we've taken here.
What would you, John? What would you say is arguably the one that
if they were going to? Oh yeah. What's collective? Yeah, that's a good question. Collectively, what do we all say is the
highlight?
I think if I'm going to go for it, like in terms of what we all collectively probably like the most, I think it's Dick Tracy. Maybe Flash Gordon.
I felt like that we were all 100% on either Darkman or Rocketeer.
Those were the Patreon episodes, and I do agree.
Yeah, because those are
not... yeah. Okay, never mind.
Yes, I do agree in terms of those are the ones I certainly do. But of the main line, Conan the Barbarian, maybe the Arnold one.
No,
I think you were closer with Dick Tracy.
Yeah, Dick Tracy or Popeye for me. Because those to me are the closest they got to the source material and successfully.
Way to go, Specs.
Most of us sit there going like, the problem being that these aren't ridiculously complicated, sources. So why can't they do them well? It's because they always think they're smarter than it. We've got a fresh take. No, I think going with an old take or a pure take is better than I'm going to change things up. So Flash Gordon I enjoy greatly, but no, I would never put that towards the top simply because it's pretty far away from its source material.
Well, it is and it is. I mean, it's that one of the things I like about that.
No, it is. It's
no one.
I enjoy it, but it's not.
I suppose my barometer is not as based on what have they nailed of the source material as much as I think we all agree that we really like the Phantom as well. The 90s Phantom.
The Phantom
is
very close with source material too.
But I
Doc
think,
Savage not at the top.
Not so much.
No, I think we can all agree Doc Savage
or
is
the
pretty
Shadow.
The Shadow's amazing though, so I don't know where you guys are coming from on that. I think
we can knowledge of the character pre the movie.
20 minutes is pretty great. But,
I think we can all agree on the ones that don't work for sure are things like Doc Savage, Man of Bronze, or the 1997 Prince Valiant in particular. I don't think we have great love for the 1954 Prince Valiant.
No,
but
neither of them was great.
That's another one where Prince Valiant, you should be able to make a good Prince Valiant movie, and they just can't.
Well,
it would cost you some money, though.
I think my joke is true, though. It's really, you should be able to make a good Prince Valiant movie out of a comic strip that bores the living shit.
Well,
that's kind of
the thing about it, though, is you should be able to. There's enough stuff in there. You should be able to pick a few exciting moments and build something. I think the other thing, the big lesson, I think this is the case this week. Now, this movie has other problems too, but also, I think they need to, and I think they have stopped the idea that these are gonna make your studio. No, pitch the pulp movies where they belong. Understand that the audience is gonna be a certain section. It's people like us. Don't bankroll your studio on a 1930s
or if
property.
You're going to do it, it's up to you, studio, to educate the audience of why they should be interested. And don't assume that they're all us, people who follow this stuff or have read this stuff. So yes, there's a built-in audience, but even something like when they did Iron Man, and that was a shot in the dark, because they're not starting with a Captain America or Spider-Man or the Hulk. They're going with a C-string guy, and it's up to them, which they did very well in the trailers, showing you his brilliance, his wit, then some seriousness, and then some badass armor. It's they sold the character. The character's been around for a long time, but they were smart about not everybody knows Captain America.
There is a resistance to some of the old timiness of these characters, so you need to explain. It's I think you think there's dust on this audience, but let's blow that dust off and go, and pretty cool, right?
I would also interject that in the things that we've liked, that they've it is a matching, and not to bring up auteur theory, but it is a matching of director and material.
I do think
almost in every single case.
You can tell who's making them sincerely, right?
Yeah.
And I think
and it always helps if it's been a lifelong dream project of somebody. It may still not work, but
this
you can see the
this
passion.
one's an interesting.
With a case of Popeye, it's a matching of a director known for kind of a muddy audio track with material that in cartoon form is a muddy audio track.
Of a lot of muttering.
I do think it's interesting you bring that up, having just talked about this movie, because this movie, I don't feel it's Verbinski's making it very sincerely, but everyone around him isn't. It feels like so. It's a weird. This Lone Ranger's a weird example of. I don't necessarily know that he's in love with the source material, but he's definitely in love with the aesthetics of it, and is on board to make a big, exciting Western movie. But it's a weird example of I think surrounded by different people and material, Verbinski could have made a killer Lone Ranger movie.
I think that he was sold on repeating the tone that they had accomplished. So I think he wanted to do a Western. They said, okay, but have some of that wacky zing that Pirates had. He's like, no problem, got that in spades. But no one was actually looking out for the main character or the main characters. They were going, oh, we blend all this together. And I think you're right. Verbinski was very excited to shoot a Western. It would have been better if Verbinski was very excited to make a Lone Ranger movie.
Right.
Or I mean, I think what would have helped if he had been that excited, and there were some screenwriters who were very excited to make a Lone Ranger movie, and they could have put those things together. But it's interesting because I don't know that these guys weren't, but they were clearly more excited to make a Zorro movie. As they did years before. Anyway, and that will be probably when the Jones Boys return to the IP squad, will be the Zorro season, because that will be sort of an offshoot of this in a lot of ways.
Out the night when the full moon is bright.
I mean,
comes the horseman known as Zorro.
That theme song is still incredible. It's perfect.
It's great.
But yes, you guys will be back because we are going to be doing a whole season. We didn't cover Zorro because that's
Tarzan
because those will be separate seasons because we would have been at those forever. Those are the pulp heroes that still people are like, ooh yeah. And we can have whole discussions about why that's the case on those seasons. Why Zorro and Tarzan continue to permeate culture when a lot of the other ones don't.
Because both guys, hey John, I'll sum it up for you right now. We don't have to do the seasons. Both guys, they like to swing on things.
They like to,
and that's real cool.
I mean,
everybody loves that. John, you know what people love? Swinging on things.
That's one of the big
people getting stabbed.
People
getting stabbed and swinging on things. It's cool.
That's the problem with the Shadow. He didn't swing on enough stuff, man.
He didn't swing on enough stuff. Doc Savage don't swing on stuff.
Yeah.
That's
dark-haired men stabbing things.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what they like.
But, of course, for our listeners, next week we'll roll into a whole new season, a very different aesthetic, and a new co-host, Mike Gergoni, will be joining me to talk about the Alien and Predator franchises and the franchise they became together. I think that's going to be an interesting season of two separate franchises that became one franchise before becoming separate franchises again.
So, Captain, are you saying that we're off the streets now?
I'm saying you're off the streets.
The mayor's complaints have finally gotten through, and
I need your badges and guns on my desk.
You want your badge? You want my badge and gun on your desk?
You take it.
Yeah.
You take it from me.
All the times we've saved this city. All the times.
You two idiots wrecked half the city today. Yeah.
I'm happy to be an ex-IP squatter. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you'll be back. Everybody will be back. And of course, if you can't get enough of this, there is more of the Jones Boys discussing pulp-inspired characters over on our Patreon page, patreon.com/punchup. And you can hear us talk about the aforementioned Darkman, Rocketeer, and Sky Captain, who are all did not originate in the pulp or comic strips, but are certainly greatly inspired by those things.
Let me tell you something about Sky Captain. We are going to lay down some hot takes. You guys are not going to believe.
I know you have hot takes.
How we tear that apart and put it back together.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting episode. So you're going to
Giovanni Ribisi's going to need a few more, sessions.
You'll never
at the Church of Scientology.
You'll never hear me say anything bad about Giovanni Ribisi.
He's going to need to be.
He is
double
one of
audited.
our best. He is one of our finest.
No, I do love him.
If he survived us talking about him in the Mod Squad, then he is not going to survive.
I like these. Hey, by the way, well, that is a future IP Squad season. Will be movie adaptations of old TV shows, of course.
So Beverly Hillbillies,
Mod Squad, Army Hammer will be back on that.
Where are you? Our radical take on
Army
that.
Hammer will be back on that for the Man from U.N.C.L.E. movie, of course. So,
boy,
yeah, that's a good one.
Okay,
yeah.
And on that note,
well, at least for now, we'll say goodbye to the Jones Boys on the IP Squad.
My pleasure.
Until next time, the case file is closed.